Well, hello, hello, hello. A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where in the world you're joining us from today. My name is Ken Ramirez, and this is Live from the Ranch. And my co host today, as every episode, is Juliana DeWillems of JW Dog Training and Behavior in the Washington, D.C. area. Hi, Juliana. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Ken. In all of our years of doing this, it has now been the longest stretch. I missed 2 episodes. So obviously we didn't meet last time, and then I wasn't here for October. So this is the longest stretch I've gone not being on Live from the Ranch.
It
It's so
has
good to be
been. Was
back.
September was your last episode,
Mhm.
but since that time, a lot has transpired, and I was so pleased to see you debuted Matilda, your new dog. Tell us a little bit about Matilda.
Yes, because as you so kindly told everyone in October, we lost Lola at the end of September, and we spent a lot of time grieving. And then this sweet little 1-year-old Chihuahua fell into our laps. Her name is Matilda. She is so opposite of Lola. She's like silly and goofy, but there's some similarities. She's a little fearful. She's a little reactive. All the stuff we helped Lola through. So it's been a very interesting process. I haven't had a new dog like ever. Lola came with my wife Katie 10 years ago. So I've never had the process of bringing a new dog into our home and doing that acclimation. So it's been quite the learning experience for me.
Isn't it amazing, though, how often we as professional trainers will find ourselves in situations where we're going, oh my goodness, this is a challenge, or this, oh, there she is.
Yeah, she's normally not downstairs. She just ran down. She said, I heard you were talking about me. Yes, this is Matilda. She's very sweet. But no, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I couldn't
No.
agree more. I said, I was like, I need a dog trainer. It was crazy. I couldn't access any of my dog training expertise or like perspective or knowledge during those first 2 weeks.
And I think that's an interesting realization that I think we all come to, that it's one thing when you're looking from the outside at somebody else's problems and somebody else's concerns, and recognizing that when it's happening within your own household, you look at it from a completely different perspective, and sometimes all of your wonderfully professional thoughts and ways of handling things are like gone from your brain for some reason.
Like 100%. I said, if a client was coming to me and telling me that these things were happening, if a client needed support through this, like I would know exactly what to say. And yet I thought my world was over. So it was really, really eye-opening. It of course, made me a better trainer to support my clients in the future. And I'm grateful to say we have both settled in and things are going much more smoothly now, but it was certainly a learning experience.
No, I know how that is, and I'm glad to hear that it's going well, though. And it was
Yeah.
great to see Matilda on Instagram the other day, and I thought, oh,
Thank you.
great to see that you have that dog now, and that
Yeah.
hopefully it will all continue to go well.
Thank you. And before we move on, I want to ask about how the Elephant Project went this year, because you too had a big month while we were off.
Yeah, this last month I've been not at the ranch. I have been all over the
Mhm.
world. I spent 2.5 weeks in Africa doing the Elephant Project, and then right after that, I headed off for a trip to Australia, and I just got back yesterday.
Ooh,
But the Elephant Project went really well this year. This was the 8th season that we've been helping to train this group of elephants to migrate around the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it went very, very well. Our 8th season is now complete. We had another growth in the population this year, so that's exciting. And with 2 years left to go, I feel the most confidence I've felt that when we complete the project in 2 years, that the elephants will continue to migrate the new route without our help, without any prompting, without any barriers, without any water holes to lure them the correct direction. I feel pretty confident that it's going to go well. We still have 2 years, and so I shouldn't speak out of turn, but I feel very good about it, and I'm sure I will be talking about that. I'm sure at Clicker Expo this year, as well as at other presentations that I'll be making as time goes on. But the results have been really exciting, and I feel really good about the progress. And so It's been
That's amazing. And for anybody who wants to know what Ken is talking about when he keeps saying Elephant Project, you've talked about it multiple times on the rant live from the ranch over the years, and you can, do a deep dive binge of all your explanations about what the Elephant Project is.
Yeah, in fact, we just posted something in the chat for people right now about how to look at some of our previous episodes where we've talked about that. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, thanks for asking about it. It's been an exciting project, and I've been pleased with how everything's gone so far. So that's
Yay.
great. And
Amazing.
without taking up more time, I want to move right into our topic this week. This month we're gonna be talking about veterinary social work, and my guest is going to be Valerie Bogey, who's with us today. Valerie is a passionate advocate for enhancing well-being for caretakers within the animal world. While the majority of her 20-plus year animal care career was spent training exotic animals in zoos and aquariums, she also has experience in a variety of other settings, including veterinary clinics, animal shelters, and dog training. And like so many others in the animal care field, Valerie experienced burnout and compassion fatigue, and eventually leaving the career that had once been her dream job. Her journey took a transformative turn upon discovering veterinary social work, which is what we're going to talk about today. It's a field that's focused on the human side of the human-animal interaction. And she understood firsthand the profound impact this kind of support could have. And so a new dream job was born. Valerie now actively raises awareness and develops resources to support the growing and expansive field of veterinary social work. Valerie graduated from the University of Tennessee with her Master of Science in Social Work and a Veterinary Social Work certificate. She currently serves as the Director of Partnerships for the International Association of Veterinary Social Work, offers dog and cat training sessions as a behavior consultant, and leads human support services for Insight Animal Behavior Services. Additionally, she provides psychoeducation and consulting through Valerie Bogey LLC. She's excited to be bringing veterinary social work to Clicker Expo Live in 2026. I'm excited that she's going to be joining us there. And so I want to welcome her to Live from the Ranch. Hey, Valerie, how are you today?
Hi. So glad to be here. Welcome, everybody.
Oh, thank you. Since this is your first appearance on Live from the Ranch, many of our regular viewers may not know a lot about you. So before we even begin talking about veterinary social work, can you talk a little bit about your interest in training and in animals and how that career got started for you back 20+ years ago?
Yeah, of course. So I was told when I was figuring out what I want to do for college after I graduated high school to be an animal trainer. I knew I wanted to work with marine mammals. I wanted to work in zoos and aquariums. That just had been something that was always very interesting to me. So I was told you have to get a degree in science and then a lot of unpaid internships. So I did that. So I have that undergrad in environmental science and geography. And then my second internship was at Shedd Aquarium 20 years ago. I had to do some math there, but we've now known each other for over 20 years, which is pretty incredible. But so yeah, you just have to work your way up as far as the unpaid internships, get the experience, get the part-time gigs, and really work your way up into the full-time kind of realm of that. And I think one of the things that I've always really enjoyed, not only about building relationships with all of the amazing exotic animals that I've had the great honor of working with and building relationships with them. But it's also the humans. The fact that you all have this same goal of caring for these amazing animals, giving them the best quality of life, but also educating, also advancing science and doing the research that we're able to do in zoos and aquariums and things like that. So doing that in different states with different animals and different facilities and things like that. And then along the way, working at Shedd and starting the first pet show, the Shedd Way, together with you, and learning how to train dogs alongside of all the exotic animals really just, I think, skyrocketed my interest in the science behind behavior, and just all the amazing things that we can do and also advocate for the animals in our care.
Well, and it's surprising. You talked about being at the Shed Aquarium 20 years ago, and of course that was predominantly an exotic animal training position, but yet you were involved in a special program we had. And I have a clip of us working together back at the time that I'm going to show you. This is actually a video that I put together for one of my courses about, and it just happens to be talking about recalls, but it was something that we had in our public presentation about working with dogs, and you were featured in that video. And so this is a clip from that I'll show you that shows you working with our dogs in that program. You want to play that for us now, Rachel?
In 2008 and 2009, we featured a very popular pet training show at the aquarium, which helped guests learn how the positive reinforcement techniques we used with our exotic animals could benefit their pets at home. One of the things we discussed in every show was the benefit of a recall signal. We would demonstrate that even if a dog was getting food and lots of attention from its favorite trainer, a well-conditioned recall would cause a dog to stop everything and run to the sound.
Really fast. Let's see what he does. There's Charlie. Now this is his top speed, but there he goes.
A recall signal should be a unique sound that is not like anything the animal normally hears in its environment.
All right. And I wanted to end with that portion of the clip because that is Wiley that you were working with there at the very end. And that is a dog that you adopted, Wiley, from our program to be your own personal pet. And he's still around. Is that right?
That is right. He celebrated his 18th birthday on November 10th. It is crazy. I always say, I get the luck of the fact that he is a small breed. He's still about 14 pounds. We did the DNA test. So he is not a Corgi Chihuahua mix that I thought this entire time. He's a Pomeranian Chihuahua mix. It doesn't make much difference because he's amazing. But it's really funny to see those. And also too, just that perspective of, I thought I knew so much then. And as I've gotten older, I realized I don't know much at all. Right. And so I think that's also very pertinent too, as we, you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed back then. And what a journey it has been over this past 20 years for me. But very grateful for that start and even just seeing all those amazing animals too.
So one of the things I want to ask you about is you talked about the journey that you've been on. And one of the things that I mentioned in your bio as we were introducing you, you talked about the fact, like so many of us, we go through this period of time where we experience burnout or compassion fatigue. And that is what actually led you to becoming more involved in veterinary social work. So can you tell us a little bit about that period of going through compassion fatigue and burnout, and tell us a little bit more about veterinary social work and how that led you to that career?
Yeah. And I think this is applicable no matter what space that you're training animals, whether you are a dog trainer, a cat trainer, a horse trainer, or you are working with exotic animals. This is also very prevalent in the veterinary fields, the shelter world, right? So any of these spaces where you have animals, because we know that animals need care 24 hours a day, whether it's observations or we're making sure the enrichment, the diets, all of the things are present there for them. And so I think too, also, especially in zoo and aquarium world, we don't realize or think about when you're working towards this, like, oh, I'm going to miss a lot of holidays with my family, or, oh, I am going to have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to get on the red line to head down to Shed, things like that. You don't always plan for some of those things. And those are some of the things that get really, really tough and can kind of wear on you. I think also too, all animals, eventually do pass. And we've experienced animals that, I was looking at it. I remember very vividly when we lost TK's calf in 2011. It was like less than a week old, and just how heartbreaking that was for everybody there, all parts of the staff, the volunteers, all of those things. And I also remember we all had time to say goodbye, and that sticks with me and that resonates with me, because that's one of those times where I was like, man, we're being cared for so well by our supervisors, by our management, that we all had that opportunity to kind of grieve together, to go through that emotional journey together. And that wasn't always the case everywhere that I was. I think for a lot of reasons, when we think about animal loss in general, that is considered disenfranchised grief. So that's grief that isn't always necessarily understood or really seen as a true reason to grieve by the general population. And I'm sure most people here that are watching can agree, our animals are so important to us, whether it's your own personal pet that you see as family or the pets that you're helping to train and things like that. So there's definitely some gaps there. So it's the long hours, sometimes having to work two jobs, and then also sometimes interpersonal challenges, right? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, you're working with all these amazing animals. It's like, well, yeah. Do you have at your own job, whatever industry you work in, do you have a coworker maybe you don't get along with that well, or maybe you have some challenges with leadership and things like that? That still happens, even though the animals are so cool, right? So I think people sometimes forget that, but those are all still present because at the end of the day, it is a career, it is a job. So that wears on you after a while. So I decided to step away knowing, hey, that door's always open. I'm always going to have this experience on my resume if I decide that that's something I want to do later on. But it just kind of happened at the right time where my husband's mom needed some additional care down in Tennessee. We were still in the midst of COVID in 2021. So I'm like, I just need to take a break and just kind of recalibrate myself and kind of see what my next thing is. Is it revisiting that career or something new? So the catalyst for me really figuring out veterinary social work, to be honest, I mean, it's 2025. I found it in 2022. It actually started being a thing in 2002. I had never heard of it before. So if you're sitting here today and thinking, what the heck is veterinary social work? Please do not feel bad because it is really a emerging and still growing little kind of subset of social work. So I kind of stumbled upon it as far as like, do I want to be a life coach? My whole kind of question for myself was, how can I support the people doing the amazing work with animals in the way that I wish I would have had greater support while I was in my career. And so then I found the University of Tennessee program. That's originally where veterinary social work started in 2002 with Dr. Elizabeth Strand. And there is now kind of several different programs. So the one I started with was not the master's. It was actually called the Veterinary Human Support Certificate. It is specifically created for the animal professionals. So veterinarians, vet techs, dog trainers. That's where I got in. I was like, well, I do dog training. I've trained animals and got in that way. So I look at that as kind of social work light. So you're not officially a social worker after that program, but it's really going through all the quadrants of social work, giving you additional skills. There's some self-study. There's kind of live Zoom coursework. And so really kind of got me really excited about it at the opportunities. And then that's when I was like, well, I got to do the master's now. I got to sign up for that next. And just graduated, like you said, in 2025 with that master's and the certificate in veterinary social work.
So as I hear you talk about it, it seems that veterinary social work encompasses or can encompass quite a variety of things. And so if you were doing one of those elevator speeches where you just have a really short amount of time and somebody says, what is veterinary social work? How would you define it? How would you describe it?
Yes. Okay. So I think about it. It's 3 words. So if we know what social work is people being trained to help humans. We had the veterinary part, and that is animal care. So put it together, veterinary social work is humans helping humans that care for animals.
Gotcha. No, that's great. That's a very clear explanation. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a veterinarian. It means that you are working in that field, but you are really looking at the human aspect of the animal care job. And there can be a lot of different things, whether you're dealing with the loss of a pet, or whether you're dealing with just the stresses of life. It's all of those things, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's 4 main quadrants of veterinary social work. So you just hit on 2 of them. One of them is the grief and bereavement. The other is the kind of well-being aspect and compassion satisfaction. The other two quadrants, one is the link between human and animal violence. So statistically, data shows that if there is harm in a home to an animal, then typically it is also happening to the humans in the home and vice versa. So there's a pretty strong correlation there. And so that might be things like the Purple Leash Project, which is trying to advocate for more animal friendly domestic violence shelters. Because right now, I think we're still sitting at like 3 to 5% of all shelters nationwide that allow pets. And we know also that, over half of the population own pets. So that's actually one of the sticking points where some people that are in a dangerous situation will not leave if they don't have a place they can take their pet with them. So that's one quadrant. And then the final quadrant is looking at animal assisted interventions. So that might be, a therapy animal, that could be a service animal. It might be someone who is a licensed clinical therapist or social worker. So they are doing true therapy, and they choose to have an animal in their setting with them, where their clients are able to interact with the animal in that way too. So, and then you think about equine therapy, and we see things for like veterans and things like that as well that are emerging as well. So a lot of different ways that it could go as far as the opportunities for veterinary social work.
Wow. Well, it feels like we have a lot that I'd love to unpack and ask you about. We're going to take a quick break, but before we go, I thought I would let our viewers know that we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Have you heard of veterinary social work before? Yes or no? Is this the first you've heard of it? And what aspects, if you have heard of it, have you ever used the services of someone involved in veterinary social work? We just like to hear your stories and tell us a little bit about your experiences, or if it's like a brand new thing that you'd never heard of until today. We'd just love to hear about it. We'll look for that in the chat, and we'll be right back as I want to talk a little bit about our dog trainer professional program before we continue our conversation with Valerie. So at Karen Pryor Academy, you can sort of build your skills and knowledge by enrolling in any of our on-demand or real-time virtual courses. Or you can take the next step in your animal training career by applying to our professional dog trainer certification program, which has both in-person or fully virtual workshops. You can learn more by going to KarenPryorAcademy.com. And you can see on the screen right there a list of some of our upcoming workshops, and that's just a small percentage of the many workshops available coming up in 2026. So don't forget to check us out there at KarenPryorAcademy.com. And let's go back and have our conversation with Valerie. And I was fascinated by the fact that you talked about these 4 different quadrants of veterinary social work. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to is that we've invited you to attend Clicker Expo in January, where we have this theme that we're going to talk about, is these emerging new trends in our profession. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things that people either have not heard about or only know a little bit about. And one of them is this idea of veterinary social work. So when you talk to our attendees at Clicker Expo, the virtual expo that we're doing at the end of January, what are you going to be talking about? What is the main focus of your conversation? And what can people expect to learn from coming to your talk?
Yeah, so I'm very excited, and I really appreciate the invitation to share this, because it is emerging. And I think the biggest thing that I want to share with people during that talk is this is a tool that can help you. Because I think in a lot of ways, when we think about a dog trainer, you wear many hats, right? We make jokes about how many hats we wear, especially if you are it, right? Maybe you were running your own dog training business. Therefore, you are the administrative person, and you're answering the emails and the phone calls. You are the person that is paying the bills. You are the person that is advertising and marketing and running your own website and social media. You're the one that's actually writing the training plans and going and having the sessions. And sometimes you feel like you got to play therapist too, right? Because we understand how very vulnerable that our clients end up being with us as a dog trainer to really help them, right? They are kind of letting you know all the challenges they're having with their dogs. And sometimes sometimes that brings in other aspects of their life as well. And I think there's some skills you can definitely use, things like emotional CPR, which is a great kind of peer framework for building your active listening skills, as well as ways to help kind of support yourself through maybe grief. How do you support clients that are grieving the loss of a pet? Because a lot of times too, as the dog trainer, unless you're working with multiple animals in the home, that's now the end of not only the relationship with that animal, but the relationship with the humans that you have probably grown to appreciate and really enjoy working with as well. So there's a lot of different layers. So I really hope to kind of deep dive into kind of all the nitty-gritty details of veterinary social work, how people can learn more, because there's different certifications and depending on your interests, and then also too just really those useful tools and ways that you can support yourself better as well as support your clients, their well-being and their emotions a little bit better as well.
So if someone's hearing about us, we've had a number of people write in, a couple of people saying, yes, brand new for me, or I love Dr. Ballantyne wrote in and said, yes, because Valerie is on our team at Insight and the services she can provide are such a crucial element to our client care. So I appreciate Dr. Ballantyne joining us and watching. But if someone is really interested in saying, wow, I could really use the services of someone who does this, where would you point people for resources? Because it's one of those things that, because most of us haven't heard of it, I'm not sure we would know where to go and what to look up and where to find that kind of help. Where do you point them to? What are the resources you suggest they go to find out more or to get someone to help them?
Yeah, great question. So, because I noticed a gap in information and resources, I created my own directory of veterinary social workers, as well as others that are have different types of training, right? Because there are pet loss grief counselors and kind of other ideations of additional trainings that are out there next to and kind of adjacent to veterinary social work. So I wanted to be inclusive of kind of everyone who's under that umbrella. So I created a directory. I'm nearing 100 people on there, and that's international. So I have people from around the world that are on that directory. So also too, I think as we're using that tool, we also need to define and kind of get curious about what kind of support do I need or what kind of support does my client need? Because there's also different levels of mental health providers and support as well. So for me, in my role, I have my master's in social work. Social work is title protected, so I can say I'm a social worker. I am not, however, a therapist, because that is a LCSW. It's called something different in different states here in the United States, called something different in other countries as well. But that main difference is I am not diagnosing. I am not, I'm not coming up with coming up with a specific modality or evidence-based method of treatment and things like that. So really my role as a social worker in these spaces is I am helping with active listening, especially when people kind of need a sounding board, a safe space to maybe talk about some decision making. Am I rehoming? Are we euthanizing? Maybe there's some conflict in the household as far as we don't agree on training methods we want to use with our pet or something like that. I can help in that way. Also can help support people that are grieving their pets. So there's kind of that layer of others that are kind of in alignment. And so you might see that as like support sessions. I see it also advertised as coaching. And a lot of times there's a little asterisk somewhere that says, this is not mental health therapy. So when you feel like, maybe myself or maybe my client might need something a little bit more in depth and have a relationship with a therapist, then that's where you have to find someone that is certified in your state. So that currently we're working on a social work compact, and I know there's some for counseling and therapists where you are certified in one state and then now you're certified in many. But for now, you have to find somebody that is certified in your state. So when you go to this directory, you can actually filter by that as well. So if you're like, yes, I definitely want a long-term relationship with a therapist who understands the human-animal bond, you can go and find your state or your country on there so that you can find the best match for
And
you.
just to let everybody know, if you haven't noticed in the chat window, we have put a link to the directory that that Valerie created there, so you can look at that. Don't go to it right now. Go to it after the broadcast is over, but definitely you can check that out right there. So, as a veterinary social worker yourself, how frequently do you get calls, and what do you find the is there a predominant reason that you get calls, or is it really quite varied, the reasons that people might reach out to you?
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that I get to split part of my time under my own business and LLC. The other part of my work week is with Insight Animal Behavior Services with Dr. Ballantyne, that's based out of Chicago. So it is a veterinary behaviorist practice. So some of the supports that I run under Insight are for people that have pets with extreme behavior issues. So sometimes that's separation anxiety or aggression in the home towards other animals or humans, leash reactivity, fear of loud noises. So a lot of the common problems as dog trainers that you probably see fairly often, but we don't always recognize that emotional load that comes with it, right? And when you're working on separation anxiety, a lot of times you can't leave them home alone, depending on what your training plan looks like, or it has to be very minimal. You have to time out medications and dog sitters, right? There's a lot of planning and management, and oftentimes that's also a loss of the freedom to go socialize with other humans. So, helping people through that, or if you have animals in the household that are aggressive, there's a lot of management in place, right? And it can be stressful to think, oh, did I latch the gate? Did I put the thing in place? Like, did I do all of the things? There's an additional mental load for all of these challenges. So having a support group where people from around the world can come and talk about some of those things has been really impactful. I would say some of the other things that I talk to people a lot, working with dog trainers that are, either working through their own emotions or just having maybe questions about how they can connect with their clients better. Maybe they have a really tough client and they just need some additional coaching or support to figure out the best way to meet the needs of the human and animals in that household. And also, unfortunately, I do have a lot of conversations surrounding euthanasia for behavior, because there's just, again, when we think about resources for pet owners, we've come a long way with pet loss grief support and things like that. But when we get down to that subset of those that have had to make the very difficult decision to euthanize for the extreme behavior issues, there's not a lot of resources. So I do end up helping people kind of before and after some of those decisions have to be made as well.
Yeah, I was going to point out, just because coincidentally, one of the things that we're doing at Clicker Expo this year is we talk about emerging new trends. In addition to your talk on veterinary social work, we actually have another talk that is specifically dealing with behavioral euthanasia and the big challenges and conversations that come up about that.
Mhm.
But one of the things that you just said that I thought was really interesting, that I think maybe needs to be explored a little bit, is as you brought up a lot of the challenges that people face with their dogs at home, whether it's separation anxiety or leash reactivity or whatever. We usually think about those as training challenges and things that we need to focus on, but really what you're talking about is thinking about the self-care that is necessary for an individual to take care of themselves and the emotional issues. And I would imagine one of the challenges that a lot of people face is a lot of people are not very good at self-care. They're like, I want to make sure my dog is taken care of. I want to do everything I can for my dog. And they don't necessarily think about taking care of their own needs and their own issues. And so I guess it would be, I'm trying to figure out how we get the word out so that people recognize that that's an important part of good care, and seeking out someone to help you with those things seems to be so valuable and so important now that you bring it up. But if we
Mhm.
hadn't been talking about it, would people think to go that route or think to seek someone out for that kind of help?
Yes. So I think one of the coolest things that as I was going from animal behavior world to human behavior world, there's so many parallels,
Mhm.
right? So that's also why I really love working with dog trainers and pet owners, because they many cases understand the spectrum of fear, anxiety, and stress. We understand that escalation of stress levels within our animals, but we can't always remember that we're wired the exact same way. So I think that kind of speaks true to that as well, where if your dog is lunging, biting, growling, having a really tough time, won't eat their treats, won't listen to you, you recognize, okay, we got to get out of Dodge. We got to kind of cut our losses and help my dog de-escalate in this moment. We don't always think about it the same way for ourselves, right? Because, but if we are very, very stressed out, and again, for same thing, it could be kind of that trigger stacking and that cumulative effect of little things that kind of push our dogs over the edge. Same thing for us, right? So if you had a very busy work day and you had a rough meeting with coworkers, and then you got bad news via text from a friend or family member, right? So you have all these things, and then you get home and now you're like, oh, now I have to walk my dog, and oh my gosh, I got to put my treat pouch on, and I got to be hyper vigilant because my dog is leash reactive. There's many times, if it's an option, I will gently coach pet owners to say, do you have to walk them? Do you have a backyard? What other things can we put in place to help you out? Because if you are not in a good place mentally to be on your A game, to remember your treat pouch, do you have your high value stuff? Are you being hyper vigilant? Is the time you're going out at the same time that your dog's arch nemesis dog is going to be out as well, right? There's all of those things you have to think. And we always talk about setting our animals up for success. This is a way that we need to set them up for success by, like you said, kind of going through yourself first of like, how am I actually feeling right now? Because I talk to so many pet owners where they do have that really bad day. They get to the end of the day. They are excited to see their dogs. They feel like this kind of very large pressure to take them on this long walk or do all of these things. And I ask them, well, how do you feel when you're getting that treat pouch? How do you feel when you're leashing them up? Oh gosh, I'm dreading it. Oh gosh, I'm just so exhausted. Oh, okay. Well, that's really helpful information, right? Because we think so much about data collection for our dogs and their reactions and their body language and how we think that they are feeling. How are you feeling? Right? Because I would much rather have a very quick potty break outside where we're minimizing the potential risk of encountering the stressors and triggers for your dog. And then you come back inside and you do a scattered treat party with their food, or you do like some low level like enrichment or do some training inside. I would much rather have that balance. But I think that also then ties into social pressures, right? I think a lot of pet owners have this kind of things I used to do for a previous dog that now is the gold standard and I have to do for every dog I ever have ever. Society says I have to walk my dog this many miles, this a length of time. I have to have this many, puzzle feeders inside. I have to, we have this, I have to take them to the dog park, sit at a cafe. And as we recognize, as dog trainers, that's not ideal for every individual. So I think also too, it's that, how are you meeting your needs, and how can I help you see that you are indeed meeting your dog's needs without this imaginary checklist of what a good dog owner does? Because you meeting your needs and your individual dog's needs is actually better than any imaginary kind of standardized checklist that we can even think of.
Wow. Well, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you almost have to begin your consult asking a lot of really important questions of the client so that you better understand what they're dealing with and why they're overwhelmed and what the concerns are. So what I want to suggest is, if you're watching this and you have some questions for Valerie, put them in the chat window, because we're going to address those. And right after we come back from a break, we're going to have Juliana join us as well, because she deals with so many clients herself. And I think she might have some good questions for you, as well as she'll bring any questions that our guests have brought forward as well. So don't go away, Valerie. We're going to be right back, because I want to talk for a few minutes about some of the upcoming events we have coming up through Karen Pryor Clicker Training, not the least of which, of course, is Clicker Expo, which, as Valerie mentioned, she's going to be speaking at. So next month, we've got our virtual Clicker Expo Animal Training and Behavior Conference, where Valerie will be presenting in depth on this very topic. And of course, following that, we have our in-person conference in Tarrytown, New York, which is happening in March. Both conferences feature completely different programs, so you can join us for one or for both. And we hope you will, because I think both of the conferences are showing and are proving to have a program really, really worthwhile. And then after Clicker Expo season wraps up, our season here at the ranch starts to kick off. And of course, the ranch is located just south of Seattle. I'm going to be leading a workshop on rock solid reliability, which is really about generalization and desensitization. I have another workshop on effective non-food reinforcement, which is the very first time that I've offered this workshop here at the ranch. And we have a seminar about handling problem behaviors and handling mistakes in both animals and people. Plus, Dr. Susan Friedman is going to be joining me again this year with a brand new workshop that we're doing along with Rick Hester about engineering engaging environments for our animals. And that should be a fascinating workshop that we'll be doing in August. Plus, we'll continue to offer our week-long immersive experiences, which are currently we're offering up to $200 off if you register before the early bird deadline. You can learn more about all of these at clickertraining.com. We hope to see you at any one of those events. We have a big season coming up in 2026, so we hope you'll join us, and we hope you'll look at clickertraining.com for more information about all of those events. All right, so let's bring Valerie back. I'm going to ask Juliana to join us as well, and I want to remind everybody that if you have questions for us that you'd like to ask Valerie, please go ahead and put them in the chat window. And Juliana, you've been listening to our conversation, and I felt like you've probably experienced a lot of the challenges and concerns from clients that you've dealt with. And I wondered if you had a question for Valerie before we open it up to our public's questions.
Yes, and I'm so glad that we are talking about this. I'm just like eating it all up. I love it. So, Valerie, you've talked a lot about how pet guardians use your services. What are some ways dog trainers can get support from you in the work that we do?
Yeah. So I have had pet or dog trainers come to the support groups, because if you have your own dog that has behavior challenges, you also deserve support. And my support groups are free. They're open to anyone, especially the main one. There's a couple smaller ones that have low costs. Also the one-on-one support session. So again, if you want like an intimate setting to just kind of work through some specific issues, I would say the one-on-one support is great. If you just want to come to the support group for all pet owners that have pets with behavior challenges, I also say, like, leave all other hats at the door. You're just here as a pet owner. So you take off your dog trainer hat if possible, where you're just talking about your experience and things like that, because we're not there to fix other people's problems and things like that as well. So yeah, would love to connect with anyone to support and even just help find resources or, things in your area that might be helpful for you as well.
I love that. I just want to say, I love that suggestion about take all your those other hats off, because I can imagine if you have a lot of dog trainers talking, there'd be this tendency to want to go, well, how are you handling that dog problem? And I suggest that you do it this way or that way. And it's like, no, we're not here to talk about that. But I think that's a hard thing for those of us that train, to take that hat off and go, that's not why I'm here right now.
Yeah.
And what about for our industry specifically? We obviously, it's so important for us to support people. What happens if we have like a client that maybe we're having a hard time supporting, whether we find them challenging, or maybe their issue hits a little too close to home? Like, is that something that a veterinary social worker would be a good option for?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Right. Because we always have that question, I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes on, where you're like, am I prepared to handle this? Right. So I think, obviously if it's a issue that you feel comfortable, at least on the animal behavior side of things, feel comfortable addressing, then yes, if you need a little support, maybe it's just a communication issue. Maybe is there a language barrier? Is the way that you're used to teaching humans not conducive for how that person's brain works, right? Do they have maybe some processing things that are different than what you're used to. So you just need a little guidance or support on how to best meet the needs of the humans. Because there's different ways you can disseminate information. Do they learn better from videos, and actual printed, out paper reports, an email, right? So there's different ways we can provide our resources as a dog trainer to meet their needs. I'm in talks with DogWise about creating a book specifically for dog trainers about all of these things, because it's the soft skills that we can work on as dog trainers, but I think there's also things we don't always think about. It's like the burnout isn't always from that kind of draining client. Sometimes it's because your boundaries aren't great and you're answering emails and text messages late at night, and you're never actually really off of your work day and things like that. So I think, continuing to have these conversations, give real life tools and things for dog trainers to be able to implement themselves, as well as say, hey, here's some resources if you want some, actual coaching or support in other ways as well.
Yeah, it's just so needed in the industry. The word, I feel like burnout and dog trainer, sadly, is so synonymous. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad that your resources are here. Someone in the chat did ask, do you have any advice for someone just getting started with a MSW, which means Masters in Social Work, program with a veterinary social work focus?
Congratulations. I would say, so with social work, you do have to do a field placement. So your field placement is, again, kind of like an unpaid internship that you're doing, but you're getting guidance, you're getting supervision, you're helping to put some of the things you're learning in the classroom into real life scenarios. I did a full-time program, so I was done in 2 years. So typically your first year is generalist, and then second year is veterinary social work focused. I was so dead set on doing veterinary social work field placements for both. And I had a very smart supervisor in my field placement realm at that time that said, maybe you should just do a generalist one just to start. I'm very glad I took that advice, because at the end of the day, this is my niche I'm going to be in for, hopefully for a long time. And so I had a really great experience in my second year, but my first year field placement was at a nonprofit in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And they had, it was more case management. And so it was just a different skill set for me to learn and be exposed to that. If I would have been just so laser focused on veterinary social work, I might have missed out on that really amazing opportunity. So I would say stick with generalist for your first year, and then you can deep dive into the vet social work for the second field placement.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. I also was going to bring up, we've been talking about Clicker Expo and the fact that at the January Clicker Expo, we are focusing on these emerging new trends. But I also thought I would tell anybody watching that if you are planning to come to New York to our Tarrytown in-person expo, our keynote speaker is Dr. Francine Patterson. And if you don't know Dr. Patterson, she is a licensed therapist. She's not a dog person. But she does a lot of talks. And I saw her at this one conference where she really reached out, and she's going to talk a lot about self-care and how important it is for you to be successful in your career. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make time for yourself. You have to set boundaries, like I think Valerie was just mentioning. And I just wanted to say that Dr. Patterson will be in New York as our keynote speaker. And it's not someone that most people in the dog training world have ever heard of, because that's not the world that she works in. But I was at a trainers conference. She had everybody in tears, and she was having us laughing, but at the same time made us so aware of the importance of self-care. And I just really loved her message, and I'm looking forward to featuring her at the Clicker Expo. So anyway, I didn't mean to say all of that as a promotion for Clicker Expo, but it's just talking about self-care has become so much more important. It's probably always been important, but people haven't focused on it enough. And I think the fact that we're trying to elevate it and put it out there just indicates how much it is needed that we think about things of that kind. Yeah, absolutely. Juliana, were there any other things that Valerie and I talked about that struck you as something that was worth featuring or talking about, or asking her a question about? Because I feel like there's just so many wonderful things that we can pull out of Valerie's experiences in this area.
Totally. As a dog trainer and in the industry, we talk a lot about staying in our lane. And like you said, supporting clients does mean sometimes wearing different hats. But at what point should we be careful about not overstepping or blurring the lines of doing a social worker's job or a therapist's job? What would be some things to look for when trying to support clients that they probably need more or different support than we can give them or ethically give them?
Yeah, I think I wanted to add to that, because I think that's such a valuable question. We talk about it all the time when we're talking about crossing the line when it comes to giving veterinary advice, because we're not veterinarians and we need to make sure that we make that very, very clear. But this is a totally different area. And how do you recognize and differentiate between just being a good ear and realizing that you might be crossing over into that area that should be thought of as a therapist, really something where you need to point them toward a different kind of help?
I love that question. And I think a lot can be said for active listening and peer support, right? Because as anyone who doesn't have any additional mental health training, you're a peer to, in that realm for that dog owner or that pet owner. And I think there's just so many times, and especially, I imagine some of those first times that you're finally, doing your first session with somebody, and they, you've already read the intake, you have your list of questions, and they just, right, they just kind of word vomit because they're just so thankful for the help. They're so thankful you're finally here. And they just, have probably been thinking and anticipating and worrying and being nervous about that session. So I think there can definitely be some finesse as far as, maybe I need to be a little bit more fluid as the dog trainer as far as what my kind of order of operations for my sessions are. Because I think in a lot of times too, we think, oh, my worth as a dog trainer is how many suggestions I'm giving or how long my report is. And we know it's not that. You, as the expert, being present and listening is actually super valuable, especially if, a lot of times they're saying, oh, okay, my dog snapped at my kid, or they're telling you things they probably haven't told other people in their world. So I think those are times where, if you're feeling like, okay, yeah, they're sharing, yes, this is somewhat helpful to kind of the trajectory of where we're going within the training realm of things, I think that's perfectly acceptable, right? Because that is still data and information. Or if they say, hey, I have this diagnosis, I just want you to know because this affects my attention span, or this affects my processing, or if they have a physical ailment, right, where maybe that affects how often or how they can train or walk their dog. That's important information. I think when we start dipping into where you're noticing like, gosh, they seem very anxious, or their body language, or where we notice that maybe the emotional state of that owner is starting to affect the dog, right? Because we know that there is that ability for both our behavior. If we're really stressed out, our dogs pick up on that, and same, vice versa, where we can pick some of that up from our dogs. I think just having that awareness, and when you're starting to notice like, gosh, their constant stress or hypervigilance is actually affecting the dog or our outcomes, and that's a little kind of past where I'm comfortable, right? So I think just kind of deciding where you are as far as like, where am I at with peer support? And then when it starts to get in, or when they're saying, oh, I'm in a fight with my kid, if they're starting to tell you a lot more things that are not really applicable to what you need to know as the dog trainer, that's, I think, when some gentle suggestions of, thank you so much for feeling safe with me to share that. That sounds really tough. I want to make sure that I am, supporting you as best as I can in my role as your dog trainer. I do have some other resources if you feel like you like additional emotional support. How does that feel to you? Right? Boom. And then that way, open it up that way.
That's really good, because I was just about, that was my next question, was going to be, so what do you, if you hear these things that let you know this is beyond where I can be of service? I love the way you put that. I'm glad you trust me enough to share this with me. but what are the things that you suggest? And I think you made a good suggestion there about, can I share some of the resources with you that might be able to help you? Because I think that's where, as an active listener, you can be really good at listening, and you can start having all of these thoughts, and you're thinking, I think they need help, but I need to be careful about how I suggest help, because it can be almost offensive if you suggest the wrong kind of help. And so
Right.
do you have other thoughts about what can help us guide people toward that help without being offensive?
Yeah, I think just kind of that open-ended of, I think just first acknowledging that they are being vulnerable and that obviously they trust you if they're telling you some of these things. And then, depending on your relationship with that client, right? Your client might have already told you, oh, I'm in therapy, or oh, I'm on, medication, I'm taking fluoxetine and so is my dog, right? Like many of us have heard some of those sentiments. So again, we can kind of go back to some of those things and say, hey, I know I know you've told me prior that you're working with a therapist. I have other resources along those lines that are more well-versed in, human animal bonds. And also to, if you feel like maybe it's someone that's feeling really isolated because maybe there is not anyone in their direct circle of friends and family, that understands really the depth of the issues that they're facing, that also might be, hey, did you know there's a support group for people in your situation, where it's, you can just come together and share how you're doing and hear where other people are in kind of their entire journey. So I think just, because at the end of the day, if you are a dog trainer, you are a helper by nature, right? You are there to help the pet. You're there to help the human. So it does feel good to at least try to give some tools. And I think too, finding that kind way to offer the tools, and then it's up to that individual to pick them up. Right. Like, so in the same way that you say, okay, I would like you to work on a go to mat, and I want you to work on, the first 2 steps of muzzle training. That's up to them then to implement those things in the same way that if you say, here's some, emotional support. And you can also say, oh, other clients I've worked with have found this valuable, or right. So kind of incentivize it a little bit, or I've checked it out and, or I know who's leading it, or I've, spoken with this person, right? So anything that you can say like, hey, yeah, this is a legit thing. I find it valuable because they do trust your opinions. I think however you want to package it, that again feels authentic for you, is a great place to start.
Thank you. I think that's really, really helpful. And I really appreciate the way you sort of approached it and suggested that we say it. And I'm going to conclude by just saying something that Dr. Ballantyne put in the chat right here. I want to share with everybody. She says, being able to refer people to veterinary social workers, and Valerie specifically, has been a game changer for me in my work. And I think that's what we're looking for, is finding these other resources that we can refer people to. And Valerie, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, because I think you've shed a light on an area that I think we all recognize its value. We all recognize how important it is, but we often are at a loss as to where to point people toward and what to suggest. And I think you've made some excellent suggestions. And I really want to encourage people that before you leave, that you look at that you take down that website or that link that we provided that Valerie offers to share those resources with more people. So Valerie, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know that our viewers have found it really valuable. We see this in the chat, that people have been really appreciative of the fact that you've joined us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Clicker Expo, where we can hear a full 90-minute presentation about this topic. And we've put that link to resources in the chat yet again, just in case you missed it, because I think that will be a helpful resource for everybody. So Valerie, thank you for joining us. Juliana, thanks again for being co-host again today. And I wanted to take another break to tell people just a little bit about a special opportunity we have in our retail area that's going on right now. It's the 12 days of training. That's right. For 12 days straight, we're unwrapping a little bit of joy for our training community. A brand new gift with every purchase of $10 or more in our retail shop. So we encourage you to head on over to shop.clickertraining.com to claim your gift today. And having said that, I want to let everybody know that next month, the first Thursday of January happens to be New Year's Day. So we are going to take a break from broadcasting on New Year's Day, but we are in the process of putting together our schedule for 2026. We have a lot of exciting things coming up. We will be back. Juliana and I will be back on February. Let me check. I think it's the 5th. Yes, February 5th for our next broadcast. We'll let you know who our guest is going to be and our plan for the remainder of that year in February. So we hope to see you there. And we want to remind you that if you have suggestions, if you have ideas for things that you'd like us to talk about on Live from the Ranch, you can go to our website, go to the suggestion area. There's a little place where it says share your comments, suggestions, or training videos button. We always love hearing from our viewers. We always appreciate your feedback. And finally, we want to just remind you that all of the offers that we've talked about today, don't forget to take advantage of that. Whether you want to become a certified trainer, or you want to look at some of the wonderful events we have coming up in 2026, or you want to take advantage of those 12 days of training, which are taking place right now, all of that information is available on our website. Thank you so very, very much for joining us today, and I hope to see you back here in February. Have a very happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy New Year, happy holidays, because there are so many wonderful holidays coming up right now, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. Happy training. Bye-bye.